careful, Chief. That elite was an ultra.
Today we're going to be talking about the power of blasphemy. You know, I made a lot of jokes talking about how, Halo Studios, they're blaspheming the things that are holy and sacred to us by, making Master Chief look like a fat lunch lady or having him sleep around. And, blasphemy is a powerful thing. It is a very powerful thing, and I think there's a reason that blaspheming sacred things is forbidden. There's a tendency of wanting to blaspheme sacred things when you're trying to win an argument with someone. I've seen it happen on the timeline. Mormons are, members of the church. They're arguing with Christians about the apostasy. And so the Mormons, or the members of the church, they feel a need to, debunk the Shroud of Turin in order to win the argument. And I don't know. I'd like to believe that the Shroud of Turin is real. I don't really want to blaspheme sacred things, sacred Christian things, just because in the event that the Shroud of Turin is real, I don't want to be held guilty for mocking it, because it would be really real. I don't know how you could possibly tell the difference between a forgery and an authentic artifact that has been maintained and restored over the course of 2,000 years before all the modern standards of what document preservation or artifact preservation are. They didn't know any of that stuff, so sure, a restoration and a counterfeit could look exactly the same. So I don't know. Seems pretty hard to tell. When we talk about anti-Mormons and everything that they have done, or are they anti-members of the church now? I'm not sure. These CES letter types, that is their main goal. When they make the CES letter and they're pretending to be genuine, honest seekers of truth, I'm just like you, but I had questions that need answering. These John DeLynns, these guys like Jeremy Runnels, or more recently, there's the guy who did the Who Killed Joseph Smith documentary. I'm just honestly trying to figure it out. I'm just honestly searching for facts. This is the way they always sell themselves. It's the way they present themselves. And it is dishonest. It really is. They are very insincere. They are not honest seekers of truth. All they want to do is blaspheme sacred things to our faith, because I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know what motivates people to want to do it. I've tried to understand it. For some reason, if it was up to me, I think I would spend my time living my life. If I decided to leave the church, I think I would want to just move on with my life. But, these people, they work really hard. They work harder trying to prove the church false than members of the church try and strengthen their brethren, I suppose. John DeLynn, he wants to go into the history, he wants to learn about it, he wants to talk about it, he wants to do all this stuff, right? All rough stone rolling, it's the true history, all that kind of attitude. And yet, when he brings on this Rodney Meldrum guy, who straight-faced tells him that the earth is a crystal, or an ice crystal, and he compares, homosexuality to murder, or something like that. And, he says stuff about the blacks in the priesthood, and, the lady with the beak, she's like, I can't even, and she has to, rage quit and leave the studio. And, Rodney, he's going on about, the archaeology and stuff, and John's like, no, we can't discuss the science. There's not a priest here. I mean a scientist. You'll have to come back when I have a scientist here so he can speak for the magisterium. That is kind of the attitude that they have. They're not willing to just listen to him talk about the ice crystal, right? And I use that example just because it's stuck in my mind as such a funny thing, such a funny way to try and justify a worldwide flood. For me, I think a worldwide flood is justified because every culture in the world believes in it. I don't necessarily need to focus on the mechanics of it. It's kind of like a lot of these conspiracy heads. They'll get very focused on, nanothermite and the burning point of jet fuel and the melting point of steel and all this stuff. And I'm not too interested in the mechanics. I think that we need to just focus on, big picture things. It's pretty funny to watch, Rodney Meldrum talk about these things to John DeLynn, the honest seeker of truth, who I guarantee if Rod, said something about horse dewormer, John DeLynn would have, a total meltdown on his show. They're just not sincere. What is sacred? Every culture has sacred things that you should not blaspheme. There's the unquestionable, the sacred, every culture has those things. For our culture, those things are certainly the temple, the prophet Joseph Smith's character, and the atonement of Jesus Christ. That's probably our top 3 things. That would make people very uncomfortable if you were blaspheming them. But what's the most sacred thing to the secular religion? You know, we are all indoctrinated in the secular religion in public schools. It's a secular religion, you know, all that business that the people talk about. But I'm trying to make a point here, okay? Don't bully me. So what's the most sacred thing for secular people? Is it the rainbow stuff? You know, that's part of it. Is it, you know, hidden figures? You know, these BIPOCs or whatever they're called? That's part of it. And, you know, it hit me really hard one day. I was listening to Don Bradley, and, you know, Don Bradley is this scholar who he bought into the all this demoralization stuff with the history of Joseph Smith, and he became convinced that Joseph Smith wasn't who he said he was. And he even stopped believing in God. And he tells a story about how he didn't believe in God. And at this time he was still like a paid research assistant for the anesthesiologist guy whose sister converted to fundamentalism. What's his name? I don't remember. Brian Hales? Brian Hales. But yeah, he was talking about how he didn't believe in God, and he felt like the fact that the Holocaust had happened was proof that God did not exist. And I was just like, Don Bradley, I testify that God exists. No, that's inappropriate. But yeah, maybe I should add that to my arguments of God, the list of arguments for God that I like. It's, you know, British code breakers prove the existence of God. Wow. You know, that one seems watertight. So maybe I should add that to the video or make a new one. Good arguments for God. Jokes aside, I think that since we've all been raised in a culture where we learn about World War II every year for like a month, and we also learn about like civil rights, which is another part of it, but like the most sacred thing that we force our children to look at pictures of, to traumatize them and tell them nightmare stories about the boogeyman, mean Mr. Mustache, or whatever you want to call him. We are all taught that this is unquestionable and it is very, very tragic, and you shouldn't make fun of it. It is the most sacred thing in our culture. I think most people would be more offended by like a Holocaust joke. They'd be more offended by a Holocaust joke than, say, like Sarah Silverman making jokes about killing Jesus again or something like that. She has a whole career making those sorts of jokes, and I don't see any Christians who are not debanked and a hiss and a byword who make money making those sorts of jokes. So like it's been very hard for them, you know. Kanye West, he can make all this music, saying all sorts of rapper things, and as soon as he says that someone invented a microphone, he loses like $1 billion. So it's just kind of proof that there are certain lines that you can't cross, even among the non-religious, and they don't like it. Anyone who claims to be like, oh, I'm just an honest seeker of truth, I'm trying to figure out if the Mormon religion is true, you know, if the Book of Mormon's true, and they throw this J. Reuben Clark quote out, like, if we have the truth, it cannot be harmed. If we don't have the truth, it ought to be harmed. They throw that out like there's some sort of hero. And it's just like, if we're going to talk about John Taylor and Willard Richards murdering Joseph Smith, then I need to know that you're willing to go all the way with me on JFK. Because otherwise you're just not being sincere. And then not just JFK, the spy ship in the 6-Day War, the pencil factory worker, you know, who was behind feminism. Was McCarthyism real or not? Is Christopher Nolan's latest movie simply a cover-up for Oppenheimer, who really did steal the bomb? You know, we can talk about like internet censorship and like the groups that control that power. Like if you're not even willing to even have a conversation about that, like if you're going to have a come apart because Mel Gibson, you know, blamed the Pharisees for the death of Jesus Christ in his movie, I don't know why I should be listening to your little CES letter, you know? I don't know why I should be listening to it. You can talk about, oh, I deconstructed my faith, I broke my shelf. It's like, yeah, what else have you broken your shelf in? Like, all of these things are blasphemous and taboo because they lay the groundwork for committing the greatest blasphemy, and that is being willing to talk about David Irving, what he has to say about World War II. And if you're not willing to go there, then I just don't feel like we can have a fair conversation as like a member of the church and a convert to secularism. Because that's usually what these people are. They're atheists, right? And if you're not willing to go there, then I just don't want to talk to you. I just don't care. Anyway, I'm not saying that you have to believe certain narratives about World War II history. I'm not saying you have to believe them or disbelieve them. What I am saying is that if you are this honest truth seeker guy and you're not willing to have that conversation, then you're not an honest truth seeker guy. Because you should be willing to at least have the conversation and give your opinion on it. That is the point I'm trying to make here. So yeah, and that's why I just can't take them seriously, you know what I mean? I just can't do it. You're not really willing to go there on any topic at all. All you are doing is destroying the one idea in your head that isn't totally in unison with the whole secular, basic, run-of-the-mill, injected into your brain at birth worldview. And that's the point I'm trying to make here. So, sure, people are going to say, oh, what are you trying to say? Okay, I'm trying to make a point about truth-seeking and willingness to blaspheme the sacred, no matter who it's sacred to. That's what I'm trying to make a point about. You know, this stuff, it comes up in our history. It's used to bully everyone into submission. Like, there's this whole thing with the baptizing people. You know, baptizing people who died in Europe in the 20th century as if that's like some great sin. You know, lots of people have died horrifically. Lots of Lots of them probably don't want to be Mormon. But that's what we get. If you want to baptize the whole world, people were offended when we didn't want to baptize certain people. And now we want to baptize everyone, and that's a problem too. We have this Jerusalem Center in Israel, and that was a huge pain to get set up, to get the permit for that land, which we don't even own. We have permission. We have permission to use it, and the permission is contingent on us not preaching the gospel and not baptizing anyone in Israel. You know, when we were trying to get this set up, like these extremists in Israel, they were following Jeffrey Holland around with signs, and some of the other general authorities there who were in charge of it, they're like harassing their kids at like the school. They're like showing up to find their kids at school, showing up at their house with signs. And it's just kind of bizarre. And eventually the brethren gave in because they were first greenlit to go, and then later they were forced into this agreement about not baptizing. But the brethren were like, you know what? Fine. Mormon 3:16, we're just not going to do it. And then there's the whole like family search controversy, it is literally a resource that is for the whole world. You know, we use it to keep track of like baptizing the whole world. But anyone can go in there and use it to learn about their ancestors. It's not like forbidden, okay? So this guy, this leader of some genealogy center for Jews, he was using our resource that we've created for the world, and then he got all offended and was mad that we were practicing our religion and providing this resource for him to learn about his ancestry. But he got all mad, and so something like 300,000 names were removed, which is that's an interesting number. And the definition of a victim of war crime, like, it's very loose. There's people who get payments from Germany. I mean, I don't know if they're still alive, but in the past there's been people who got payments from Germany for their whole lives. They weren't even affected at all. They weren't there. They were just in Europe. But yet they get these reparation payments for their whole life. I actually heard that from this YouTuber guy who his channel was mysteriously deleted. I can't imagine why. Probably a clerical error, but I won't say what his original channel name was either. But he eventually, I think he made a second channel at one point. It was like God With Us, something like that in German. He's from Canada, and if I'm remembering right, his mother's side of the family is Jewish, and his father's side of the family is like Polish Roman Catholic, you know, like Catholic Polish people. He told the story of how he had an aunt who escaped Europe to, you know, Canada, and was basically unaffected by World War II, like she escaped unscathed, and yet she received these reparation payments for her entire life from the government of Germany, whereas a relative on the Polish side of the family, the Catholic side of the family, was actually imprisoned and held in a work camp for the entire duration of the war before they eventually came to Canada, and they never received a dime. He just told that story, and it really struck me as somewhat odd. One other thing that's a little confusing to me is that it's so offensive that these names could be held in a Christian database or be their names could be used in a Christian ritual. And this is our First Amendment right. It's our freedom of religion. The brethren constantly talk about how our freedom of religion is under attack, and this is one of the many facets of this problem of our religion being under attack. This is our First Amendment right, to baptize the whole world. We believe that we've been commissioned by God to do so. According to Israel Shahak, or however you say his name, Jews have very strange rituals concerning the dead. They have to have a Jewish cemetery versus a non-Jewish cemetery, usually. And every time a Jew passes a Jewish cemetery, they're supposed to say a prayer. And every time they pass a Gentile cemetery, I don't know if there's a lot of different types of branches of their religion. So I don't want to make it overly simple, but it is a common practice, I suppose, to say a prayer cursing the mothers of the dead if they aren't Jewish. And I feel like that's a little bit more offensive than a baptism using your name. So I don't know. Maybe we should ban people cursing the mothers of the dead. Maybe we should make a big scandal about that and slander people about that. And I just don't think that this is not how things should be. This is what the First Amendment is for, so we can practice our religion. So let us do it. Anyway, that's just the point about the baptisms. I don't know why the idea that Mormons would be doing their religion is so offensive to them. Maybe it's the 300,000 number. Like, they're worried that lines up with the Red Cross statistics or something, and they think that we might have some sort of official count that will, I don't know. It'll just be information about these historical events that appears objective, that's outside of their control. Like, I don't know what that's about. Maybe it's certain numbers have special significance for like biblical prophecy reasons. Like Drew Briney always talks about how all the numbers in the Bible, like the numbers of deaths, like Hebrews have like this ancient tradition of kind of exaggerating numbers for symbolic purposes. They're trying to say something else, and maybe they're worried about like the confusion that might cause if it's 5 or 7. I don't know. And I don't want to go too off the rails here. The Book of Mormon, it warns us to not like quote, make game of the Jews. And Nephi warns against persecuting them because of all their contributions toward, like the scriptures, the Old Testament, and all the things that the ancient Israelites did. Like, he says, hey, like, we need to take what they were doing seriously. We can't just throw it all out. Like, you can't do this baby in the bathwater stuff. And yet there's like a level of cognitive dissonance there, because Nephi is also saying, you can only understand the prophecies of Isaiah if you understand the manner of prophesying of like the elders of Israel. And I refuse to teach my people that manner of thinking because it's too dangerous, because it's evil. He calls it secret works of darkness. And that's like the stuff, those words are only used ever to describe like the Gadianton robbers, like dark stuff. So it's very strange to me. Both Nephi and Mormon kind of speak out of both sides of their mouth on this topic, which is very interesting. Mormon 3:21 is another scripture, and it kind of does that. It's like, I wrote this book to convert them, but they never will. Something like that. And there are great members of the church who have come from that lineage, the Ashkenazi lineage, like Alexander Neubauer. Like, he wrote one of the first-hand accounts of First Vision. He's an ancestor of Hugh Nibley. There's also, like, his brother-in-law is a guy named Rosenbaum, and he helped start the Brigham City Co-op and get that running, which is probably one of the greater achievements of the early church. And Brigham Young, he said that the blood of Judah had been purged from Alexander Neubauer's veins. And I don't know why he said that. Maybe he just was trying to get everyone to treat them equally. He was worried they wouldn't be treated the same. But maybe it is true. Maybe that really happened, and maybe there is something about, Ephraim and Judah kind of constantly being at odds. They're kind of rivals with like the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judea. Like, they never really got along. Maybe there is some sort of resistance there to listening to the truth that Ephraim has been called to restore. I don't know. But we do know that there is a day prophesied that Ephraim and Judah will get along. Judah will no longer vex Ephraim. And I think we need to prepare for that day. Just remember that there's like a lot of power in these blasphemy tactics. And so these anti-Mormon people, they seek to undermine your faith using all these blasphemy tactics. From every angle, people are trying to discourage you by remaking movies about your childhood nostalgic memories or games, and they're remaking them, but they're twisting them in a way that is, I would say it's almost blasphemous, and it's meant to discourage you, demoralize you. It's a humiliation ritual, right? That's what everyone always says, which is, I know it's oversaid, it's over talked about, Blasphemy is a tool that Satan uses against you to get you to reconsider, and it can get you to paradigm shift, like so you can actually fall out of your worldview by doing the blasphemy thing. That is a power that can be used for good, it can be used to acquire more knowledge, and it can also be used to lose knowledge, and so it is a very powerful power, and you should be very careful when working with these, spiritual tools of mass destruction. Be very careful when studying these hard topics, and use the Spirit, use the Book of Mormon. Always, whenever you feel you've discovered some new great truth, always go back to the Book of Mormon, double check yourself, kind of vet it, let it stew for a while, and if things feel right, if things make sense, then continue forward. The Book of Mormon is kind of this ultimate touchstone, it's an ultimate guide stone to direct us and to vet new ideas with. That's how I like to use it. I feel like if I have a new idea, then I need to go back to the Book of Mormon and vet it and find proof that it is a true principle or something true, and that I haven't been deceived. These are the tools that people will use to convert you to other worldviews. A very good example is this very prominent guy named Curtis Yarvin. He also has like a name Mencius Moldbug. He's like a federal asset. His parents are both like spies. So it runs in the family. He's certainly a spy. And he wrote this book called like an open letter to open-minded conservatives. And it's interesting, I suppose. I enjoyed reading it. But what's really interesting about it is how he starts out basically undermining your faith in the American Revolution. Because he's trying to build you up to have a new view about how America is and how America works. The way he starts is by undermining faith, essentially, in the American Revolution. And he does this by presenting historical evidence, viewpoints of the Loyalists, and basically, blaspheming George Washington and the Founding Fathers, essentially is what he does. And he does this to break you down so that he can then place new ideas into your head. And you need to be cognizant, you need to be aware of when this is happening to you. Because a lot of people, there's stuff to learn in what he's written. I'm not saying that there's not stuff to learn. He encourages people to read first-hand accounts, of history, which is a very good thing to do. But you need to be aware of when people are using these tactics to essentially brainwash you, because that is how the paradigm will get shifted. That's how your worldview will shift. And so, yeah, be careful of him. Luckily, when I was recommended to read them, I was given a hint. And they said, read Mencius Moldbug. You read his book, but always remember, he said very cringe things about you-know-who and the you-know-whos. And at the time, I had no idea what they meant, but yeah, he did say those things. And it makes sense to me now. And so I'll give you the same advice. But one of his big takeaways after he has led you through this adventure through time and history and rethinking what America means, big things that he wants to place into your head is this idea that there is no secret combination. There is no secret combination, guys. And I think that is extremely curious. And it reminds me of that meme. They take like the Korihor meme and they have like the Testaments guy. But they say, I do not deny the existence of a secret combination, but I do not believe that there is a secret combination. And I say also that ye do not know that there is a secret combination. And except ye show me a recent conference talk, I will not believe. And that's kind of how I feel about this Moldbug guy. He strikes me as very suspicious, just given his family record as like working in embassies and all this intelligence, being very close to intelligence, and not just American intelligence. It's all very suspicious to me. In the Bible, we also see that Jesus Christ, when he's trying to convince people of the truth and of the true nature of the world and of good and evil, also uses these similar blasphemy tactics. He is frequently accused of blasphemy for healing the sick on the Sabbath day. His apostles are picking the grain to eat on the Sabbath day, and they're being accused of, doing labor, breaking the law of Moses. Christ says, I am the Son of Man, something like that. And everyone accuses him of blasphemy for claiming that he is God. And by doing all these things, this is how he creates his band of followers. This is how he gets them to see the world differently. And so these tactics can be used for good. And that is why I am using them. You may have noticed that I am using these tactics to try and get you to think about things differently as well. You know, kind of slaughtering the sacred cows. And just be aware of that. And I'm not trying to compare myself to Jesus Christ. Like, that would be extremely inappropriate. But I'm just saying that I am attempting to use these powers to convince you of good things. That's my intention. So be aware of that, and don't let yourself be deceived, and always be aware of what someone's angle is. Because in today's world, someone's always trying to sell you something. It's not always obvious, but they are trying to sell you something. There is no neutral ground in this world, so just have that in your mind as you go throughout your day. Those are your thoughts for today on blasphemy and how to use it for good or evil, and how to engage with these anti-Mormon people who want to blaspheme our religion and yet aren't willing to blaspheme anything else that is held sacred by the world. And so they're insincere, guys. They're just insincere. I don't want to hear another rock in the hat joke, or Joseph Smith was a con man joke, and a Freemason and a fraud. I just don't want to hear another joke about that from people who aren't willing to laugh at my jokes about a certain someone's ballpoint pen collection, okay? I'm just not willing to hear it, okay? Sorry! I'm just not going to listen to you. I know, but I'm just not going to do it, okay? If you're not willing to listen to me make jokes about this certain someone who died in a hospital of typhus and say, you know, there's nothing wrong with baptizing her, if you're not willing to even be in the same room with me, if you're going to leave the studio in a rage, then I'm just not going to talk to you. So yeah, that's how I feel about it. It's just silly. You know, anti-Mormons hate this. Defeat them all with one simple trick. So there's your lesson for today. Go out and use it. Go use that trick. Maybe don't. Maybe don't. You might get in trouble. But anyway, food for thought. Have a good one.